I took a week off work in early fall. I thought camping in Timberwood Forest would help me recharge. After a tough year, I wanted to escape. I'd spent over a decade as a park ranger, but that didn't prepare me for what happened. I set up my tent as the sun went down. It felt peaceful. I built a small fire and roasted hot dogs. The woods were quiet, just me and the trees. That first night, I listened to the leaves rustling. Then I heard a noise, like something moving nearby. Maybe a deer. I shrugged it off and crawled into my sleeping bag. I was tired and fell asleep pretty quickly. The morning sun came, and I woke refreshed. I brewed some coffee and hit the trail for a hike. As I walked, I noticed claw marks on a nearby tree. They looked strange to me, irregular and jagged, like something was trying to carve its mark. I felt a shiver pass through me, but pushed it aside. I didn't take a picture. I don't know why. I continued deeper into the woods. The air felt strange, heavy. I looked down at the ground and noticed large tracks next to the path. They were bigger than any animal print I'd seen. I felt uneasy. Still, I thought I could figure it out. Maybe I'd stumble upon some amazing find. Later, I met up with a group of hunters sitting by a crackling fire. They were laughing, sharing stories of strange encounters among the trees. My heart raced with each tale. One guy spoke of shadowy figures watching him. Another said he heard deep growls coming from the trees. I laughed with them, but their words stuck with me. I thought they were just exaggerating. It's easy to let fear take over in the woods. I left their camp feeling strange, like something was lurking just out of sight. That night, I returned to my site, still on edge. As I lay in my sleeping bag, I heard that rustling sound again. But this time, it felt more urgent. I told myself it was just wildlife. I tried to relax. Then I saw movement. Something shifted between the trees. My breath caught in my throat. I didn't want to look, but I had to. I stood still and listened. The rustling stopped, and everything went quiet. I felt a chill run up my spine. Why had I come here alone? The air felt heavy, like a warning was hanging around me. Suddenly I heard a whisper, soft but clear. "You shouldn't be here." I froze, heart pounding. I looked around, but there was nothing. I turned to run, but shadows moved and I realized I wasn't alone anymore. I stumbled backward, trying to catch my breath. The trees seemed to close in around me. My instincts screamed for me to escape this place, but my feet felt glued to the ground. I never wanted to lose my connection with the woods, but something was very wrong. I couldn't shake the feeling I was being watched, trapped in the realm of things unseen. The next morning, I woke to an unusual quiet. The usual bird songs and rustling leaves were gone. I sat up, scanning the campsite. My heart raced, a tight knot forming in my stomach. It wasn't just the fear from last night. It felt like the forest itself was holding its breath. I pulled on my jacket and stepped outside my tent. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch toward me. I noticed the claw marks on the tree again. I felt a pull to examine them closer. Maybe I'd missed something. As I approached, the heavy air pressed down, making it hard to breathe. I crouched down, studying the ground. The tracks were still there, dark and foreboding. They led deeper into the woods. I knew I shouldn't follow them, but curiosity gnawed at me. What could possibly leave such marks? I decided to pack up my things. I couldn't stay here. The woods felt alive in a way I didn't understand. As I rolled up the tent, I heard a twig snap behind me. I froze. Adrenaline surged as I turned slowly, half expecting to see whatever shadow had been stalking me the night before, but nothing, just trees swaying gently in the breeze. I shook my head and finished packing. I couldn't let my imagination drive me mad. Once my gear was stowed, I took a last look around. That's when I saw it. A faded, weathered sign half buried in the underbrush. Warning! Area ahead unstable. Proceed with caution. Had I wandered into a restricted area without knowing? My pulse quickened at the thought. I stepped back, and the ground beneath my feet felt different, drier, cracked. I crouched again, running my fingers over the surface and tracing lines that seemed to lead further on. Fear twisted in my chest. I was standing at the edge of something. Before I could think it through, an icy wind rushed through the trees, howling like a voice of its own. It was loud and sudden. The branches whipped around me, and I stumbled backward, losing my balance. Panic flooded me as I righted myself. I had to get out of here. I hurried down the path, my breath ragged. That's when I heard it. A low growl, reverberating from somewhere in the woods. It echoed off the trees, sending a chill through me. I froze again, listening. It was close, too close. I glanced back, dread curling in my gut. Whatever it was hunting. The hairs on my neck stood on end. I needed to find my way back to the main road. I took off, moving faster than I ever had on any trail. The growl turned into a series of snorts, almost like the sound of something hooving in the dirt. Was it an animal or something worse? Panic clouded my judgment. I took a sharp turn, hoping to lose whatever was behind me. I pushed through the underbrush and stumbled upon a clearing I didn't recognize. My heart raced, pumping hard in my chest. Before I could collect my thoughts, I spotted a flicker of movement. It was another camper, a woman with muddy boots and a wild look in her eyes. She looked at me with a mix of fear and urgency. "You need to leave, now!" That was when everything went dark, like the woods had swallowed the light. I jolted awake, my heart pounding against my ribcage. My surroundings were murky, shadows melding together like living beings in the dark. Panic surged again, but I forced myself to breathe. I could still hear the wind outside, a low whisper creeping through the trees. "Hello!" I called out, my voice shaky. There was no response, just silence. I blinked, trying to adjust to the dim light filtering in from somewhere above me. It took a moment to realize I wasn't in the clearing anymore. I was lying on a hard, cold surface. Suddenly a muffled thump echoed from outside, followed by hurried footsteps. The sound jolted me upright. My senses surged to life, adrenaline flooding my veins again. I scrambled to my feet, taking stock of my surroundings. I was in a small shed, littered with old tools and forgotten gear. The door was slightly ajar, casting a sliver of light. I crept to the door and peeked out. The woman was standing a few yards away, hands on her hips, as she faced two men I didn't recognize. They were dressed in dark clothing, faces pale and drawn. I could hear snippets of their conversation, but their tense expressions told me everything. "Did you hear that noise?" one of them said, glancing over his shoulder. The woman shook her head. "We can't stay here any longer. It won't stop until it gets what it wants." I felt a chill creep down my spine. What did that mean? I held my breath. I wanted to step outside, but the fear of what lay beyond the door held me in place. The men exchanged glances, then nodded. "We should go deeper into the woods," one suggested, his voice low. "There's a chance we can lose it there." "Are you out of your mind?" the woman shot back, desperation lacing her words. The last time, I didn't catch the rest. My mind raced. Whatever they were talking about, it wasn't safe here. But what was this it? The tension snapped as the other man pointed behind her, eyes wide with terror. "There! It's coming!" Panic surged through me. I didn't wait to see what the threat was. I pushed the door open and bolted into the sunlight, heart hammering against my ribs. The woman turned, eyes locking onto mine, disbelief flickering across her face. "Wait!" she shouted, but I was already running. The growl returned, more menacing now. I didn't know what I was running from, but instincts kicked in as I zigzagged through the trees, searching for a path to safety. Branches whipped against my skin, and I stumbled. I had to find a way out of this nightmare. Then I caught movement out of the corner of my eye. There it was, a dark figure weaving through the trees, low to the ground. It wasn't like any animal I had ever seen. I felt a surge of dread, realizing this was all far worse than I'd imagined. But before I could turn back, I noticed the woman had followed me. She was close behind, breathless. "We have to stick together." I shot her a look, torn between fear and the instinct to trust her. "What are we running from?" Her face went pale, and I knew I was not prepared for her answer. That dread I had felt all morning coiled tighter in my gut, ready to explode. But before she could speak, the dark figure lunged forward, and everything around us shattered into chaos. I was still trying to understand what I'd just seen when the figure lunged. Instinct took over. I grabbed the woman's arm, pulling her away as my legs propelled us forward. We sprinted deeper into the trees, branches scratching at my face and arms like angry fingers. "What was that?" I gasped, glancing back over my shoulder. The underbrush rustled, branches snapping under the weight of whatever had pursued us. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but the fear choked my voice. "It's worse than we thought," she said, her breath hitching in her throat. "We need to find cover, a place to hide." The urgency in her voice urged me on. I forced my mind to focus, searching for somewhere safe. We wove through the trees until suddenly I spotted an old hunting lodge partially hidden by the foliage. It wasn't in great shape, but it felt like our last chance. "Over there!" I yelled, pointing. We rushed toward the lodge. As we reached the door, I turned the knob. It creaked ominously as it swung open, revealing a dusty interior filled with cobwebs. We ducked inside and slammed the door shut behind us, pressing our backs against it. "Is it gone?" I whispered, straining to hear any sounds outside. "I don't know," she replied, looking around with wide eyes. "But it won't be far behind." I scanned the dim room. A small window offered weak light, revealing a table, a few chairs, and an old stone fireplace with remnants of ashes. "What is it?" I pressed her again. "It's something the hunters talk about," she said, eyes darting nervously. "Something they don't believe themselves until it's too late." A chill ran down my spine as I realized we were at the mercy of something unknown. The story she spoke of, the it that prowled the woods, felt like a ghost tale meant to scare children. "Do you know how to fight it?" I asked, desperate for hope. She shook her head. "No one does. All we can do is hide until it gets bored." "Great," I mumbled, scanning the room for other options. "An escape route. Maybe we can find some weapons or something." But as I stepped further inside, I felt a prickling sensation wash over me. That's when I saw it, a rusty hunting rifle propped against a wall, covered in years of neglect. Hope surged within me as I approached, brushing away dust until I could see the wood grain again. "Maybe this can help us," I said, feeling a strange mix of relief and fear. "Be careful with it," the woman warned. "If it's as bad as I think, a gun might not do anything at all." Before I could respond, a loud crash echoed from outside, followed by the unmistakable sound of heavy breathing. My grip tightened around the rifle, heart racing once more. I glanced at her, eyes wide. "What now?" "Now we see if the stories are true," she said, bracing herself beside me. The door shuddered violently from whatever lurked outside. It was just a question of time now. The door rattled with each impact, splinters of wood flying off as the thing outside pressed against it with relentless force. I exchanged a glance with the woman while my heart raced in my chest. Fear clung to us like the dust coating the old cabin. "Do you think it knows we're in here?" I whispered, hardly believing I could speak at all. "It doesn't need to know," she muttered. "It can smell us. It can sense our fear." "Wonderful," I breathed, glancing at the rifle again. It felt both like a lifeline and a curse. What if it wasn't enough? The crash came again, hard enough this time to make the door groan in protest. I pressed my back harder against it, my knuckles turning white around the rifle. "What's it look like?" I asked, hoping for a clearer picture of our foe, but dread flickered in her eyes. "Long limbs, a face that—" She hesitated. "It doesn't have a regular face. It's more of a shadow that moves and shifts." "That's not helpful," I said, anxiety creeping into my voice. I didn't want to imagine more than I had to. Then I remembered the stories we'd heard around the campfire, the warnings dressed up as folklore. "What do we do if it gets in here?" She shook her head. "Trust me, you wouldn't want to find out." Suddenly the door buckled under another forceful slam. I stumbled backward, losing my balance but quickly catching myself as adrenaline surged through me. The sounds of the woods outside faded into silence, and for a fleeting moment there was only the heartbeat of the cabin. That's when I heard it, a low growl, like thunder rolling from the belly of the woods. The growl morphed into a chilling silence, the kind that steals your breath. It was a predator toying with its prey. "Hold the rifle steady," she urged, positioning herself behind the table, using it as a shield. I stood close to the door, mentally preparing myself for whatever horror would come bursting through. But then, just as the tension became unbearable, something remarkable caught my eye. A small crack in the wall to my right. I rushed toward it, pressing my ear against the splintered wood, punctuated by the thudding heartbeat still echoing in my ears. "Over here," I whispered urgently. "What if we crawl through?" She looked at me with wide, horrified eyes. "Are you insane? We don't know what's out there." "I know what's in here," I shot back, the desperation in my voice rising. "We're not prepared for this. Not like this." The growl returned, more furious this time, as if it understood our panic. The door shuddered even more violently, and I could feel the pressure building. "We don't have time," I said, backing away from the door, just as the first crack appeared in the wood. Splinters flew into the room, revealing a dark shape looming beyond. "Move!" she yelled, and I ducked toward the wall, my heart hammering, ready to escape into the unknown. But before we could reach the opening, the lumber twisted violently, flinging the door aside. The creature loomed in the doorway, a silhouette as menacing as the tales we'd heard. No face, just a void where a face should be. And then, with a deafening roar that shook the ground beneath us, it lunged forward. I turned to run, but there was nowhere left to go. I threw myself toward the cabin's single window, heart racing as I felt the rush of air behind me. The thing was faster than I could comprehend, a blur of motion that consumed the space between us. I caught a glimpse of its elongated limbs swinging, the darkness itself spilling into the cabin. I slammed into the window frame, fumbling to yank it open. The wood screeched in protest, but I barely noticed. My focus narrowed on escaping, on getting away from that monstrous shape now thick with malevolence. "Help me!" I shouted, my voice thin and frantic. "Get it out of the way!" She was close behind me, eyes wide with terror. I can't! The growl erupted again, and I finally got the window open, desperation fueling my movements. I scrambled to push my body through, catching my jacket on the jagged edge of the frame. Pain flared, but I gritted my teeth and shoved myself forward, tumbling into the cold air outside. I rolled onto the damp ground, gasping, and pushed myself up to see the woman, still trapped. Her fear hung in the air, mixing with the scent of wet earth and pine. "Come on!" I urged, but her panicked eyes were glued to the creature, frozen in place as it barreled toward her. With a primal scream, I lunged back into the cabin, determined to drag her out, but it felt like wading through molasses as I crossed the threshold, the dark shape snapping at her heels. "Move!" I shouted, grabbing her wrist and yanking her forward. The creature whipped around, its dark form a wave of shadow that leapt through the doorway, claws glistening wickedly. We stumbled together, dragging each other outside into the woods. The chill of the night swallowed us, and the horror of the cabin faded in the distance. But the growling followed, echoing around us like a chorus of nightmares. "Where do we go?" she panted, her breath visible in the cold air. I glanced back and my heart sank. The creature was out, prowling just beyond the cabin's threshold, its form melding with the trees. "We need to find somewhere safe," I stammered, scanning the dark woods for an escape route. Branches clawed at us as we dashed forward, adrenaline sharpening my senses. An idea sparked in my mind. It was a long shot, but we had to try. "The old hunter's shed. It's not far from here." She nodded quickly, the fear in her eyes mingled with determination. We weaved through the trees, every rustle sending shivers down my spine, every shadow a potential threat. The growl grew fainter as we put distance between us and the creature, but I knew this wasn't over yet. Just as we broke through the web of trees, relief washed over me. The shed loomed ahead, a solitary figure in the night, bit by bit, pushing the weight of panic from my chest. One more sprint, and we would have a chance. But before I could even reach for the door, I heard it again. The growl. It was closer than ever, right behind us. "Get inside!" I yelled, my hand trembling as I fumbled with the latch. The door creaked open, and we both lunged in, slamming it shut, just as the monstrous form appeared at the edge of the clearing. We stood against the door, breathless, hearts pounding like drums. But then a slow, scratching sound began, a reminder that the darkness was still very much alive outside. "What now?" she whispered, fear creeping back into her voice. That's when I noticed something strange, a faint shimmer in the air above us, a symbol carved into the shed's ceiling, ancient and glowing dimly. "Maybe this could help us," I suggested cautiously, my fingertips brushing against the surface. But just as I touched it, everything went dark. I blinked, the sudden darkness swallowing my vision. The silence was oppressive, and for a moment I could hear only the thumping of my own heart. Panic clawed at me. What had I done? My hand was still pressed against the cool surface of the symbol, but it felt like the world had just fallen away. "Are you okay?" Her voice broke through the stillness. It was shaky, but a lifeline I desperately clung to. "I don't know," I replied, squinting into the dark, searching for any sign of her. I think I triggered something." A dim light flickered to life, illuminating the shed in a ghostly glow. Shadows danced in the corners, and the symbol above pulsed rhythmically. I could finally see her face, eyes wide and full of questions. "What is that?" she whispered, pointing upwards. "I don't know. I just touched it. But it seems to be connected to something." The scratching outside faded, replaced by an eerie stillness. The creature seemed to sense the change. I stepped cautiously toward the center of the room, the light from the symbol casting long shadows behind us. Old hunting gear littered the floor, a dusty shotgun, frayed ropes, and rusty traps. But one object caught my eye. An old leather-bound journal sat propped against the wall, as if waiting for me. "Wait here," I said, moving toward it. I could feel a strange pull, like the book was calling to me. I flipped it open, pages yellowed and brittle, filled with the hurried scrawl of a hunter long gone. "It's a journal. It looks like it belonged to someone who knew this area well." "What does it say?" She leaned closer, the glow illuminating her features as she peered over my shoulder. I skimmed through the entries, some dated decades ago. Most were about typical hunting exploits, but then I found a passage that sent shivers down my spine. It talks about a creature that resembles what we saw. It hunts in the dark, drawn to fear, and it can move through shadows. "Can it come in here?" she asked, breath hitching. "I don't know, but listen to this." I read further, my voice rising as I remembered the fear pooling in my gut. "There's a ritual detailed here, something about using light to banish it." "Light?" she echoed. "How? We can't unleash more darkness." But I was already scanning the room for anything that could amplify the glow overhead. I spotted a rusty lantern propped in the corner. "If I can get this to work, maybe we can make it strong enough." I rushed over, working quickly, adrenaline fueling my movements. "Please just keep an eye on that thing," I called back, gesturing toward the door. Her nod was steady, though her face betrayed her growing anxiety. I struck a match and ignited the lantern. The light burst to life, casting warm glows that wrapped around us. "It's working!" I shouted, but then came a deep growl from the outside, rumbling low and menacing. As the lantern's light mixed with the symbol's ethereal glow, the scratching resumed, this time louder, a powerful force slamming against the shed. "It knows we're here!" she cried, eyes wide with terror. And then, as if the darkness had taken form, the creature lunged, a silhouette pushing through the door. It wasn't just shadow anymore. "No!" I shouted, and in that moment I realized we needed to act. Fast. Then darkness enveloped me again, but not from the absence of light. It came with a searing clarity. "Let's end this," I breathed, ready to face whatever came next. I felt the air crackle with tension as the creature charged. It moved fast, a mass of shifting shadows and low growls. My instincts kicked in, and I threw myself backward, pulling her out of the way, just as the door shattered inward. Wood splintered, and I felt the breath of the creature on my neck, a rancid stench mingling with the musty smell of the shed. "Get the lantern closer!" I shouted. I knew we needed to create light and fast. The glowing symbol above pulsed, lighting up the walls in a flickering rhythm that seemed to sync with my pounding heart. She scrambled to follow my command. The lantern's bright light cast powerful beams into the corners of the shed, but the creature only seemed to shrink away, melting into the shadows where our light couldn't reach. "Please don't let it move through the dark," she begged, her voice trembling. "Just hold it steady," I replied, desperation creeping into my tone. I turned back to the journal, hoping to find a piece of information that could help us. My hands shook as I flipped through the brittle pages, searching for details on the ritual. A breakthrough felt agonizingly close. Suddenly a heavy thud reverberated behind me. I spun around just in time to see the creature dart back into the light, its eyes glowing with malice. I caught a glimpse of its jagged teeth and elongated limbs. It wasn't just a shadow. It was a nightmare made flesh. "Here!" I yelled, clutching the journal and waving it toward the symbol. "The ritual says we need to focus the light through the symbol. We need to amplify it." She nodded, her fear turning into resolve. "Then let's do it." We moved in tandem, positioning the lantern directly under the symbol. The hum of energy intensified. The entire room felt alive. I flipped to a passage about the final step. "It says we need to chant this incantation while focusing on the light. It will bind the creature back into the darkness." "Chant," she replied incredulously. "You mean like a spell?" "Just trust me," I urged. "On 3. I took a deep breath. 1, 2, 3. We spoke the words together, our voices trembling as we poured every ounce of will into the chant. Light flared brighter, bathing us in warmth and pushing the creature into the corners of the shed. I could see its form convulsing, distorted by the force of our light. "It's working!" she shouted, hope flooding her voice. The creature screeched, a horrible, inhuman sound that rattled my bones. It lurked just out of reach, claws scraping against the wood. But then disaster struck. The lantern flickered, its intensity wavering. I glanced at it, panic rising inside me. "No! Stay lit! Hold it steady!" she shouted back, her grip firm. But then, without warning, the lantern's flame sputtered and died, plunging us into darkness once more. "No!" I screamed, feeling the heat of the creature's presence close in around us. Everything went silent. Then I saw it. Something glimmering in the darkness, a remnant of the light that had been there moments before. It wasn't just an object. It felt like a path. I grabbed her arm tightly. "We need to move," I said, pulling her toward the glowing fragment. It felt like our only hope, but the air was heavy with dread. I dared to glance back at the dark shape creeping forward, hungry and relentless. "This isn't over," I whispered, as I felt the unshakable weight of terror settle in. That glimmer, what was it? I only had one thought as I pushed forward. We didn't have much time. I pulled her with urgency, my heart racing. The glimmer in the darkness beckoned, like a distant star fighting against the void. With each step, I could almost hear the creature's breath, ragged and cold against my skin. I didn't dare look back. I could feel it gaining. The darkness swallowed us whole as we dashed toward the light. The air buzzed with an unseen energy, almost electric. "What is that?" she whispered, her breath hitching in her throat. I don't know, I admitted, straining to keep us moving. But we have to reach it. As we got closer, the glimmer took on a shape, threads of light braided together like a rope. It pulsed faintly, promising a way forward. Just beyond it, shadows writhed, the creature twisting in and out of the darkness. Hurry! She urged, slipping slightly as the ground turned uneven. I tightened my grip, pulling her back before she fell. With a final push, we emerged into the circle of light that circled the glimmering path. The shadows recoiled, letting out a frustrated snarl. I could see the creature's form more clearly now, its long claws stretching out as if hungry for our fear. Now what? She asked, panic entering her voice. This was new territory. I clenched my jaw, scanning my surroundings for any hint of what to do next. The journal. There must be something more. I fumbled for it, realizing I'd dropped it in our rush. We were in a circle of light, yet I could still feel the weight of the creature just outside it. It's back there, she cried, pointing toward the outline of the shed. We have to go back. Are you crazy? I shot back, sensing the desperation in her voice. What if it gets us? But as I watched the creature's glowing eyes fixate on us, I knew we didn't have a choice. Okay, we'll get the journal and figure this out, I said reluctantly. We turned back, and I felt the tension tighten around me. The air shifted, tasting of dread. The path of light flickered as we moved, stretching like a lifeline into the dark edges. The creature tensed, its maw opening, revealing rows of sharp teeth, as if it sensed our weakness. On 3, I whispered. We run back and grab it. Okay, she nodded, steel in her gaze. 1, 2, 3. We lunged forward, feet pounding against the ground. I felt the pull of the darkness, something clinging to my back like a weight. I caught sight of the journal, still illuminated under the faint light where it had fallen. Got it! I shouted, diving forward. The moment my fingers brushed the pages, I heard a hiss, a terrifying sound cutting through the air. The creature surged forward, claws scraping against the ground with a ferocious intent. Run! I yelled. We shot back towards the circle of light. The creature lunged, but we dove inside just in time. The shadow reared back, screeching in frustration, but the light held strong against it. The incantation, she reminded me, breathless. We need to focus again. Right, I replied, opening to the passage. My hands shook, but we needed this. Let's do it fast. It's not going to wait. As we began to chant again, the light brightened, but I could see the shadows shifting just beyond our grasp. Something deep within me warned. The fight wasn't over. It felt like we were only at the beginning. Look! She gasped in horror, pointing behind me. I turned, dread pooling in my stomach. The creature was changing, growing more defined and furious, its form expanding as it fed on our fear. We had to end this now, before the darkness consumed us entirely. But how? I gripped the journal tighter, trying to think. Then I saw it, a strange flicker in the corner of my vision. Something was coming from the creature, a dark mist spilling forth. It wasn't just the creature's rage. It felt like all its fears and pain pooling to retaliate. Something is binding it here, I shouted. That mist, it's how it stays in our world. We can use that. Are you sure? She asked, fear and doubt intertwining in her voice. There's only one way to find out, I said, steeling myself. Then everything fell silent again. A single breath separated us from what was looming just outside our light. In that moment, I couldn't shake off the feeling that whatever came next would change everything. We grounded ourselves in the trembling air, our voices rising in unison as the chant echoed within the circle of light. Each word melded with the pulsing symbol above us, the energy intensifying around us. The creature twisted outside, its shadow shaking the very fabric of reality, but we couldn't let fear take hold again. The growing mist coiled around its form, dark tendrils reaching toward us with insatiable hunger. I could see fear etched across the woman's face, mirroring my own anxiety. "It's drawing strength from us," I shouted, my voice painted with urgency. "We have to push through." With all my might, I focused my energy, aligning it with every word of the incantation. Yet in a panic, I glanced at the creature again, and, like a floodgate opening, the darkness surged forward, solidifying into a mass unlike anything I had seen. It moved toward us, a vortex of shadow and despair, swirling like a thunderstorm, threatening to tear apart our fragile barrier. "Think!" I gasped, a primal instinct surging as I clutched the journal tightly. "What if we can reverse the words? Instead of binding it here, we can banish it completely." Her eyes widened, and for a moment I could see the shimmer of hope spark in her gaze. "We could. What if we chant those words backward?" She grasped my arm tightly, drawing reassurance from my plan. "On 3, I said, feeling the desperation coil within me. 1, 2, 3. We began chanting, the words morphing into a haunting echo that begrudgingly formed a barrier of light around us. The creature let out an earth-shattering roar, but surprisingly, it began to retreat, the shadows flickering as the daylight fought against the gathering gloom. My heart raced as the luminescence grew, illuminating the cabin and casting the creature back. I dared to hope it might work. We were challenging the darkness, a heart-pounding act that felt both perilous and exhilarating. Yet as I glanced back, something unexpected happened. More shadows emerged, as if they were disintegrating from the creature itself. They coalesced into faint figures, faces twisted with anguish. "What are those?" she murmured, stepping closer to me. "I don't know," I replied, dread pooling in my stomach as I recognized their mournful expressions. They felt alive, echoes of past encounters, or perhaps lost souls tethered to this place. It became clear the creature drew strength not just from fear, but from those it had claimed before. "Keep chanting," I shouted, feeling the power of our words fighting against the shadows that spilled forth. "We can't let them join it." As we continued, I felt crackling energy filling the shed, pushing against the barrier, forcing more layers of desperation to rise. The shadows wriggled and twisted, and I realized they were reaching for the creature, trying to pull it back to the gloom. "Just focus," I urged, fighting against the tide of terror creeping into my heart. "We can either bind it to this world or return it to the abyss." The light surged where we stood, bathing the faces in warmth and lending strength to our voices. The chant transformed, resonating with our resolve. I could feel the shadows on the edge of our light, threatening to break through, yet something deeper inside me ignited, a determination to not let it win. "I can almost see the core," she shouted, stepping closer to the light source, urging the glow higher. The pressure built with an intensity I could hardly comprehend. With a final push, we sent one last surge through the incantation, reckoning against the shadows blurring at the edges. The creature wailed, a bone-chilling sound that sent echoes through the trees. Its power waned, but knew not when to stop. Then it lurched, colliding with the light, and darkness roared through the shed. My senses reeled. Suddenly, the room erupted into chaotic brilliance. The very walls shone with a piercing brightness, silencing the howls from the creature outside. An explosion of light released, enveloping the room. And just like that, the light swallowed the darkness whole. The next thing I knew, I was lying on a solid surface, the chill of the forest air brushing against my skin. I blinked, disoriented, looking around. I found myself back in the clearing, sunlight filtering through trees, magic hanging in the air. "What just happened?" I whispered, breathless. I scrambled to my feet, head spinning. I'm not sure," the woman said, shaking her head. She looked frightened, yet relieved. The oppressive air of the shed had vanished. But where was the creature? Did we do it?" she asked, a lingering hope gracing her voice. I glanced around, searching the area as shadows flickered at the periphery of my vision. Dread seeped back in, causing the hairs on my neck to stand. "I think so," But I didn't dare finish my thought. What if it lingered, waiting for another chance? That nagging uncertainty hung between us, a haunting reminder that darkness lurked close, perhaps tied to the land itself, where the supernatural blurred with the natural. "I don't think it's truly gone," I admitted finally, feeling an unsettling weight settle around my chest. "Not completely. Something like that never just disappears." We exchanged glances, swallowing the reality of what had unfolded. Timberwood Forest still felt like a living thing, teasing shadows, reminding us of the otherworldly dimensions hidden deep within it. We would leave here changed, but would we ever really be free? As we moved away from the clearing, a chilling thought crossed my mind. If something like that could manifest here, what else lay hidden in the depth of these woods? I glanced back one last time, uncertainty overshadowing my resolve. I still think of that day sometimes. The woods aren't the same for me now. There are things I can't explain, and I can't shake the feeling that Timberwood holds more secrets. I never went back, but part of me wonders, deep down, if those shadows still linger just behind the trees.